It's time for our first panel discussion on supporting parents and caregiver well-being, moderated by Dr. Alan Mendelsohn. Dr. Mendelsohn has been a staunch supporter of Reach Out and Read for years. He is a member of our advisory board for Greater New York. He's a professor of pediatrics and population health at NYU Grossman School of Medicine, and we are so lucky to have him here today. So Dr. Mendelsohn, take it away.
Thank you so much, Trish, and thank you so much, everyone. I want to welcome everyone to our first panel discussion, which is supporting a parent and caregiver mental well-being. And I am Alan Mendelsohn, and I'm going to introduce our panelists. Our panelists today are Eaton, who is the New York State Program Director for Parent Child Plus. Ruth Horry, who wears many hats. She's a business owner of the Coco Pauline Company, a community advocate, and a fellow and family advisory board member with United for Brownsville. And Sharon Shapses, if I said your name correctly, has also worn many hats, all working to support families. She works as an emotional intelligence and leadership coach, and previously has worked as a trainer and consultant with the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. So we are really excited that you will be sharing your experiences and expertise today as part of this panel discussion. So I think we can get started. The first question I'd like to pose to the panel is, how do you think that we should be addressing parents and caregivers' mental well-being, especially during COVID-19? That will be sort of a broad topic. And maybe Sharon, maybe you can start by, if you could give us an overview that includes your work with emotional intelligence.
Sure. So first of all, thanks everyone for taking time out of their busy schedules to be here. The first question is, what is emotional intelligence anyway? So emotional intelligence is our ability to notice, recognize emotions in ourselves and in others, and to understand the relationship between those emotions and what has happened or what thought we might have had, and then to learn how to regulate or strategize, develop strategies for managing those emotions. Usually the most challenging strategies are for unpleasant emotions that we have, but they could also be strategies for being too happy so that you can't possibly get to focus on your work today because you're so thrilled about something. So it doesn't always have to be unpleasant emotions. And emotional intelligence begins at birth between the caregiver and the infant, because Dr. Yagman made a reference to co-regulating. Well, the caregiver is co-regulating. There's a loud noise in the room, the infant starts crying, and the caregiver or parent picks a child up. Oh, I could see that was scary. That loud noise made such a noise. Oh, I'm going to hold you for a while and walk around and sing a song. There's the co-regulating. And hopefully we move from that infant into preschool, where we're expecting children to develop some regulation skills, on their own. One of the biggest takeaways I could say is all of these emotional intelligence skills can be learned. Although some of us are born with more skill than others, the research at the Yale Center has concluded that we can all be better at using these skills, and that we can learn these skills, and that when we have these skills, we form healthier relationships. Children in their elementary school ages are 11 to 12% more able to do better on academic testing if they have these skills. They're less likely to be involved in substance abuse. So developing these skills are very, very important for life outcomes.
Thank you. I would ask Ruth, maybe from a parent's perspective, maybe could you tell us something about what you think is important for doctors and other healthcare providers to know when they're working with families?
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you. So I would say that transparency would probably be one of the big things that we should look out for. Being culturally aware and educated, and in addition to that, sensitive. But I just wanted to point out, supporting the staff that support us is a really big thing for me. So when the doctor comes in, we need them to be at 100 so that they can pour back into the community. So oftentimes when they're understaffed or for lack of funding, they're not able to meet the needs of the community. So I definitely want to support the staff that support the community and the backbone of the community, including the healthcare providers. So when I say culturally aware and educated and sensitive, one of the ways that United for Brownsville does that is through our learning landscape at Home Kids. So we've taken the time to make sure that we have books that we're giving to children that look like the children that we're giving the books to, because that makes a really big difference when you see yourself in the story. Also, just having parents being a part of the conversation, meeting them where they are, and giving grace. Grace is something that through the pandemic, I've learned to give to myself. So listening to hear, meeting parents where they are, and definitely supporting and seeking funding to address the mental health crisis, because it's one of the biggest things plaguing our community. So you fix mom, you fix the family. So I'm a staunch advocate for mental health, and it should be in partnership with the healthcare providers.
Thank you. Andre, I was wondering if you could comment on the dual pandemic of COVID-19 and racial inequity and its implications for parent and caregiver well-being.
Thank you for that, Dr. Mendelsohn. Let me say also good morning to everybody. And let me start off, first of all, about just centering ourselves, about seeing how we are doing, both as members of families and also as caregivers and providers. I think we have to begin with us first, because in this, I believe that for some of us, during this isolation, this caused us to have some separation from our own humanity and getting back to caring about those that we serve, caring about ourselves. And it's been echoed and already said about taking care of yourself. So I think that's critically important as well. But I think that there are four different things that we need to do. Number one, we need to build positive relationships, first of all, with our families and our caregivers. I believe that every interaction is a meeting that will create change. And so we have an opportunity at any interaction. Though things have changed and we're doing a lot of things virtually, every interaction is a possibility for change in building positive relationships. My program particularly centers on making sure that all children, regardless of their race, their socioeconomic status, or even their zip code, that they have equal opportunities from the start. That's what Parent Child Plus is really about. It's about engaging parents with their children. It's about bringing, as Ruth mentioned, bringing the books in the native languages of the families, and not just celebrating their ethnicity in a particular month. We have now made it our policy and procedure to embed those books, the culture of cultural diversity, into our curriculum. So it starts also respecting the cultures that we serve, and we have languages, more than 50 different languages where we provide those particular resources. So I think it's building positive relationships with parents. I think it's listening to both our families and caregivers, by collaborating with them to identify those stressors and needs that they need to have met. I think it's also spending quality time, both with the family caregivers and providers, and we'll be able to talk about that a little bit more. And then it's also focusing on what is going well and what's going right. We've seen a lot about the negativities of programming during COVID, but I have to say that a lot of our programs have been very resilient. And number one, our families have been resilient throughout this time, waiting for resources to be given to them as well. And then finally, I think we need to create unity, work with partners that also have the same values that you do around racial equity, and getting those resources out. No more competition, but collaboration and coordination. I believe everybody can stay in their own lane, but we can build the bridge together to get everybody across. So if parent-child is working with with children as young as 16 months to age 4, and we're part of a program like Cities First Readers, for example, who works on a particular issue, we can all work together, be in our lane, and still build that bridge to bring everybody across. And I'll stop there.
Thank you all for those terrific comments. I'll kind of segue into another question, which is and related, which is that the disproportionate effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on communities of Black, Latino, and Asian and Native American families was a sounding alarm, that calls for special focus across multiple and marginalized communities, and including immigrant populations. And so a question that I have is, how do we move forward to support parents, who are faced with compounding stressors, COVID-19, systemic and structural racism, everything else that's got poverty, and yet manage to promote equity? And maybe I'll start with, maybe we can start with Ruth to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. So what I would say, I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Sorry, sure. So, how do we best support families given, the multiple stressors, that they are facing, with COVID-19, compounding, the effects of racism, poverty, and all of the multiple stressors that families face. And maybe, you can comment either, from your perspective as being a parent, or from your perspective, in your work with United for Brownsville or an SCO.
So I would say that mental health has been a savior for us. I've worked many jobs, and I've worked in nonprofit for years, but I've never had the support that I've had with United for Brownsville in terms of mental health. Our staff, our community, our board, it is the utmost importance that we are whole. So ways that we've done that are healing circles from the beginning of the pandemic, full stop in priorities for our organization. Our board members needed to be whole, as well as our backbone team. Mental health has been at the forefront of how we support our team as well as our community. So organizations like We Run Brownsville, and We Run Well, I scream from the top of the mountain, because that is the first culturally appropriate mental health provider that I've ever been to. It not only changed the way I looked at therapy, but the way my children view therapy and the way that I'm able to share it with others. And we've broken barriers. They have broken barriers. They've helped people from immigrant backgrounds accept therapy, and not only accept it, but it's working. And that's how you change a generation. Their focus is fixing the mom. And as you fix the mom, you fix the family. When mom is whole, when I'm able to wake up at 100, I'm able to pour into my children. I'm able to pour into my community. So definitely mental health and the support that I've received from United for Brownsville, that we all have. wasn't specific to me. It's just, it has provided and continues to provide a safe space, and they meet the moment. So I honestly wouldn't know what I would do if I didn't work for United for Brownsville. So mental health and that support, I would say.
Thank you. And, you know, what I'm hearing is just that need, you know, for, you know, whether as a, you know, as a provider or as a parent, to receive the support for mental health that's needed through, you know, the services that are, you know, culturally aligned, that are available, you know, that are, you know, positive and that are engaging. So thank you.
I would just like to add that it was just one thing. It was really something when I turned on the screen and she looked just like me, and we could just get right into the care. I didn't have to tell her about my background. I didn't have to tell her what it meant to be a Black woman growing up in New York, being an American. I didn't have to tell her that my culture and my identity was gone. We got right to work. So I just wanted to say that that made the difference. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for that. Andre, I would just love to hear more about, you know, how we work with families. You know, what do we do to support parents and caregivers, you know, in this, you know, in this time of COVID and all of the other stressors that families are facing?
Sure, Dr. Mendelsohn. I think again, what I said earlier, I think we start with ourselves. I think we must move from just discussing racism. Racism has existed before the pandemic. It was, you know, now with the pandemic, we saw the inequity of how resources was distributed that made now racial equity discussed and talked about in many different forms, like we are now. But racism existed before the pandemic, and also during COVID. And we want to make sure that we can bring those resources to communities that actually got these resources last during COVID. But I think we must move from just discussing racism, racial equity, and embed them in the concepts, in practice, and in our values. And I'm pleased to work with an organization that has decided to do that from the top down. Ruth mentioned the board. We're talking to our board, we're talking to the directors, we're talking to the National Center, and we're talking to all of our program partners. And it comes up in every discussion, in every conversation. But we need to embed them in our practices, in our curriculums or programming. And we work in communities that are quite diverse. So we bring resources, again, that are also diverse, that respects the culture and languages of the families that we serve. On top of that, my organization also hires from the community. So the people, as Ruth talked about, they look like the folks from the community. They speak the languages of the folks from the communities as well. So we make that as a part of our value system of hiring for the communities, which also impacts communities to actually reach out to more families and children. Not only that, we also hire families with children who have actually gone through our entire program. So they understand what our program is about. It's more real to them, it's more genuine. And when you're real with people, people understand that you really are concerned about their needs and their wants inside these particular communities that we're talking about.
Great, thanks, Andre. And Sharon, I was wondering if you had something that you wanted to add also about this issue related to addressing equity.
Well, top and foremost is what Ruth had said about children have to see themselves in books. I mean, in addition, children really should be seeing themselves in teachers as well. They need teachers that look like them. And there's been studies that show how important it is to have those role models for them in the community. I must applaud Reach Out and Read for doing a great job of including so many more books. I've been in the field of early childhood for 50 years and started my career in Bed-Stuy looking for children's books. There were very few children's books that reflected the people in the community. And now it's just wonderful. It takes my breath away to see all the different books that are available and also the ones that are on the Reach Out and Read book list. I'm also very heartened to see that there are discussions on the Reach Out and Read website about talking to children about race and normalizing those conversations so that all people can talk about race and stop saying that they don't see color. It's a wonderful thing, and it's taken a long time, and clearly there's a lot more work to do. I think just recognizing the structural racism and being able to explain it and to understand it and how it's been embedded in our country just makes us all better human beings and better able to deal with children and parents and staff members.
Thanks, Sharon, and thanks, Ruth and Andre. I'll move on to the next question, which is, I think I speak for all of us for how grateful we feel to Dr. Yagman for his terrific presentation. It's really an honor to get to hear, from one of the authors of the new, American Academy of Pediatrics, statement on toxic stress and the role of early relational health. And I'm really interested in kind of we'll build on what we were just talking about, but thinking about your perspectives on what you think are the most important aspects of early relational health and why early relational health is so important for caregivers and children, during what are, these challenging times, as well as the challenging times that preceded, as, I think our speakers have pointed out, and the challenging times that I know will also follow, not looking to be negative. Things will improve, okay, but still. Maybe we could start with Sharon, and maybe you can build on some of the kinds of things you were just talking about. And I really want to hear about, both play and reading aloud, and why you think that those are, so important for children.
Well, I think one of the important aspects of reading aloud is the fact that it encourages conversation. And conversations build language. And if we have language, then we're able to make meaning out of all the things that we see in the world. So from a child's perspective, if they don't have language and they don't have the words to talk about how they're feeling, they're not going to feel heard and understood in the world. A specific example is if we simply teach a 3-year-old the word sad, then they can come to us and they can say they're sad. But if we teach them sad because they're disappointed or sad because they're lonely, those are two very different kinds of sadnesses. And when they go out into the world and they say, I'm disappointed, a teacher is going to respond to them in a very different way than I'm lonely. And so by encouraging them to have a larger vocabulary that relates to their emotional lives, we're helping them to develop relationships with others in their life that also add to their relational health.
Thank you, Sharon. I really just want to say that I just love the way you described how language and words, help children deal with emotions, which I think is, such a critical element of what we're trying to support, through Reach Out and Read and through Parent Child Plus and all these programs. Ruth, I was wondering if you might give a perspective, which could be either, in your work, or as a parent about, how parents about early relational health, and about how, what happens when parents and children play together or read together.
Yes. So I was thinking when Sharon was talking about my middle child, where she lacked those skills, and I at the time was young and didn't know what special needs was and early intervention, I knew something was wrong. And reaching out to the doctor and, getting pretty much shut down because they thought I was, reading baby books and things like that and just reading too much into it. And the difference in her communication as opposed to my oldest, who I lived in a better neighborhood in Queens, and she received early intervention services, and her language and her development just, took off, soaring. And, as I think now, as my middle child is 15 going on 16, and we're just building that emotional intelligence where she's able to, it's a big thing for her to be able to articulate to me how she's feeling, what she's experiencing in the world. So I think I know it's crucial because that's, where I am 15 years later with a child that should have received EI services and not having that develop, her not being able to go to daycare because she wasn't potty trained on time, or she was crying and missing out on those social, that social emotional piece that happens at childcare. So I just feel like the system failed her, and she is at a disadvantage. So it's so powerful, and I was able to right that wrong with my youngest, and we do all of this talking, and she can express herself. Like I always say, she's 6 going on 60. She's got thoughts just galore, and just a testament to that. Speaking to them, giving them that language, and like you said, not just sad. We're very descriptive with how we talk, and she sucks it up like a vacuum. So yes, it's definitely it's important. And you see the effects of it, their lifelong. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say that what really spoke to me as a pediatrician was your experience of, getting shut down by the doctor. And, how critical we think about relationships, how critical, all relationships are, and the relationships with, our quote unquote trusted professionals, when in fact, they may not have earned that trust, I think, as you just described, and how important it is for us to form those relationships with families. Andre, I know that you have a great deal of experience in Parent-Child Plus and City's First Readers, and so much around, supporting play and reading. And I just love to hear your thoughts of reading and play as positive child experiences that can, mitigate the effect of, ACEs and adverse child experiences. And that's all more about that, maybe.
Well, I'm going to echo again my colleagues on this panel too as well, but we know, and I might be preaching to the choir, that all the research has shown that the earlier we work with children and their families, the greater the chances for their success. And we believe that parents or the primary caregiver, because we know families are different now. We have grandparents that are raising children. We have foster parents still raising children. We have kinship relationships as well. But all of those are who care for them first, are their first and most important teachers of that child in that home setting. And at any given time, we can share with parents how important reading, listening, and play with children as it builds their social, emotional, and cognitive development of that child. So play can take place at any time. Learning can take place in the positive interactions between a child and a caring adult. And with our partners, Reach Out and Read, they're doing that in the health visits the parents have by introducing a book, supporting initiatives. City's First Readers can connect families to programs like mine and the myriad of programs that are inside that network overall, the libraries and school-based programs that welcomes the opportunities to work with families and children in a variety of different methods with one-on-one interactions. Again, we're going to stress again the importance of building relationships with people and getting back to that as our center. We use the model of home visitation, one-on-one models in our core programs, and also now working with family child care providers as well. So we are also working with family child care providers to increase even the quality of the family child care. When parents are at work and parents can share with their family child care providers what they learn and take those tools home with them. The parents want the tools. They want to see their children succeed as well. And we give them the tools in their native language languages as well, and also in the, emphasizing culture as well across the board. But we cannot say enough about, as I mentioned earlier, the collaboration and coordination of an initiative like Cities First Readers that goes from 0 to 5 without being competitive, but everyone looking at the need of trying to eradicate an issue around early literacy and supporting parents where they are at.
I just want to say that I just loved, you know, what you said about, you know, the fact that what we're trying to do through Reach Out and Read, through Parent Child Plus, through Cities First Readers, through Video Interaction Project, all of this is about reaching parents where they are and building on parents' goals. And I think that is so critically important. And I just want to add on this topic that, and again, just building on what everyone said, and really in Dr. Yagman's talk, is that, you know, what we're talking about today is really, you know, I hate jargon, but, you know, there's really this, you know, quote unquote paradigm shift. You know, it's really a new way of thinking. You know, the medical model was sort of the old way of thinking. I can say this as a doctor. You know, we find a problem, you know, and we try to do something about it, right? And that's good, we should, right? But that's, you know, the definition of deficit-based, right? We're finding the problem and dealing with it. And what we've really learned in the science is that we can do something proactively and in a preventive kind of way, you know, even for families who have, you know, what Dr. Yagman described as, you know, we used to think that having adverse child experiences, you know, was deterministic. It set the stage for your life. And we now know that that is not the case, that children who, you know, face those adverse child experiences and yet have positive relationships and positive child experiences, those can mitigate, those can actually buffer. And those children can do just as well as children who don't have adverse child experiences. And isn't that like so important and critical? And I just want to add one more thing to this, which is that, you know, what's the best way to provide those positive child experiences and, you know, to support relationships? You know, guess what? It's in the it's during those really good times that parents and children, you know, can have together, and reading aloud and play are probably the best ways, you know, to support those positive experiences that then not only mitigate the effects of, you know, what's going on in that broader context, right? But also support parents' mental health. And so I just want to highlight that, and how Reach Out and Read and all of these programs are supporting resilience. And I'll move on to another question, which is, I'd like to talk more about programs, and I'd like to know more about, you know, how can we support early relational health, you know, through, you know, early literacy programs, you know, like each of the programs that you're and have been involved in, through the work that you've been involved in, Reach Out and Read, you know, United for Brownsville, and all of the work that you were doing. And maybe I'll start with Andre, and maybe I'd really love to hear more about, you know, how we link programs together to build impact. Okay, Parent Child Plus, you know, how does that align with Reach Out and Read? How do the two, you know, work together? And how does, and maybe just tell us a little bit more about Cities First Readers and how it, you know, brings all of these programs together to have the biggest impact for families.
Well, I think with Cities First Readers and with Reach Out and Read and with Parent Child Plus and all those that we partner with, I think we're focusing on a particular central issue. That issue has been early literacy, but we've known through the pandemic that it's much more than that. It's really bringing them the best opportunities for parents, for families to thrive, and for children to be successful overall. We talk a lot about being family resilient, and certainly we push that, raising the family voice, families being resilient. But I think for programs and operations, we also need to be resource resilient. Your resilience can be increased by tapping into the resources that we currently possess, or could potentially possess as well. We want to maximize our talents, our mindsets, our abilities, our funding opportunities. And so it's also organizations coming together wanting to partner to get the funds to actually provide what they provide, using physical assets like the library. And I still believe that we need to continue to build on the resources that have already come together. I think there's still some undeveloped talents out there and some untapped capabilities that we can use and still develop as we try to eradicate this particular issue and as we move forward through the pandemic and also beyond. And so I think as we get more resource resilient, as we become willing not to be competitive, everybody can be in their lane. And, you know, like City's First Readers, we're going from 0 to 5. So though one program may focus on one particular age group, there's another program that either goes younger than our program or beyond our program. So we're able to make that bridge to the next step or the next level in their child development. And that comes with trust. That comes with knowing what programs provide and what they are all about, that we're just not handing them off to another program, but we're handing them to a program of quality that we actually have partnered with. And I think that's the beauty of collaboration and coordination.
I just love the idea that, you know, the recognition that there isn't a single program that's going to do everything, right? You know, the way we impact is by working together, by collaborating, and Cities First Readers is such a great example of that. Sharon, maybe I can ask you if you could talk about, you know, your experience, you know, with coaching families through all of the work that you've done.
Well, we had a lot of work that we did at the Yale Center, especially with engaging parents around emotional intelligence. And we found that there were certain messages that parents needed to hear that helped them deal with their child's behaviors around their feelings. So parents needed to hear that all emotions were okay. It's just that the way you respond to your emotion might be okay. So it's really okay to feel angry. It is not okay to bop the kid next to you with a block, you know? So what other things can we do when we feel angry? You know, lots of people use that term, use your words. Unfortunately, I don't like that term because the children don't have the words. We need to give them the words. So it's very important that we realize as the adults in the room that we need to provide the children, oh, you mean you're frustrated because that just fell. Oh, I hate being frustrated. And really connect with the child, have the child feel heard and understood, have the child say, okay, it's okay to have this terrible feeling. I'm not going to fall apart. It's going to change in a little while. And this person's here to help me, guide me through having that terrible feeling. So being able to share messages with parents so that they have realistic expectations of child development, that maybe that conversation won't work with a 2-year-old because the 2-year-old is just going to stomp their feet and walk away in frustration and maybe not be able to re-engage. But it's all right to have that conversation with a 3-year-old. So, you know, I think it's a lot about providing the information for parents that they need in order to make the right decisions in that moment about how to respond to their children. Also, that emotions leak. So therefore, if they're feeling upset about something, instead of trying to hide it from their child, they should realize their emotions are probably going to leak some way. So maybe there's a way for them to figure out something to say to the child that makes the child understand it's not about them. Mommy just heard some bad news. Mommy just had a bad situation. I need a moment. I need a drink of water. I need a cup of tea. Let's go out for a walk. We'll feel better. But parents need to hear certain messages about emotions so that not only can they, as Andrea had said about taking care of themselves, they can take care of their own emotions because they know a little bit more about how emotions work, but they can also take care of their children and develop that relationship with their children.
So what I'm hearing is that early relational health and reading aloud and play is about both supporting the child, supporting the parent, and supporting the parent's capacity to cope, to be not only to be the parent they want to be, but to support, you know, to help them cope with the stressors that, you know, come with being a parent and be able to truly be that parent they want to be. So I just love that as well. And
Yes.
Ruth, I will move on to ask you. I would love to hear, you know, your perspective as a parent about, you know, how can programs like Reach Out and Read and all of the, you know, great work that we're hearing about, you know, be most helpful? You know, how can medical professionals make these programs really work well and be most helpful? And you know, how do we bring in parent voice into, you know, better? We try, but how do we do a better job, you know, for programs like Reach Out and Read?
Yes. So I just wanted to piggyback with what Andre was saying. We need to come together. So in terms of providing services and applying for and allocating funding, I would love to see more of that togetherness as we apply for the benefit of the community and the residents, as opposed to for our specific program. So what UB has done in terms of allowing or empowering, I should say, the community members to use their voices as they gave us a platform and to be at the head of decision making. It's real, and in the community, they know when you're coming, and it's genuine. So I would say the Family Advisory Board with United for Brownsville is a really good example of what happens when you bring the community together and say, how can we make this better? As opposed to saying, we think you guys need this, that, and this. Not asking the community what is working and what could work better, as opposed to here are the programs that we feel that you need. So parent-led, we say the parents are the first teachers, and they are. So supporting those first teachers and giving them the same respect that we give any other, you know, nationality or race. And I say that to say, I was a young mom, so I can remember hearing from the doctor, you know, you read so well with the kids. And it's like, that's what my grandma did, you know, and just that assumption that because of the color of my skin that I maybe don't, or lack the skill or don't care to do that. So I think that's a really big thing. So what UB has done is provided an environment, resources, support that has been unmatched. And I came in 4 years ago, and my child has lifted off. Like in our mission statement, that was our goal. And I can definitely say that Savannah has lifted off. One of the ways that one of the resources that United for Brownsville, you know, the Learning Landscape at Home Kits, which hits like multiple levels. So we've got the Family Advisory Board that came together to put together activities that focused on literacy and social, emotional, and motor skills with things that you have in your house. So it wasn't, you know, it created a space where everyone could participate. You didn't have to have money to join in with the games and to be a part of the program. Also, we had Marley boxes, which came with all types of activities and hands-on things for sensory and things of that nature, which was provided by a woman of color. So again, pouring back into the community that pours into the community. The partnership with the Brooklyn Children's Museum is also a part of the kit. So you get to go with a family of 5, 2 adults, 3 children. So yes, the books in conjunction with the kit, the support and the platforms, I say is what's helping Brownsville lift off and our young people be successful.
Thanks, Ruth. And I really so appreciate you know, the importance of bringing in what you described about how this is about families leading. This is about family goals. This is about, you know, what do families want? And then, you know, having, you know, this broader community think about how to do the best they can for families, building on that family voice and that family goal. So that, thank you. I just want to make sure that I understand what I should do. Carrie is letting me know. Sorry. All right. So, Carrie, just make sure that I understand. I can go another minute or two with the panel, and then we will have time for Q&A that would follow. Is that correct?
Sounds great. Yeah, we can do one last
Okay.
question pretty quickly,
Okay.
and then we've got some questions waiting for us already.
Okay, perfect. As a final question, I'd like to ask, and Carrie, you'll let us know how you want us to proceed. As a final question, I'd like to ask the panel, each of you, if you could let us know, let our attendees know what resources are out there, that healthcare providers and providers generally can use or share with parents and caregivers. So what is out there? And maybe I'll start with Andre.
I think there's a multiplicity of resources that we can share with the caregivers and providers and also with families. Certainly, you're welcome to visit my organization's website at parentchildplus.org, spelled out. There's also the City's First Readers website, where there's also tools also provided for families as well. And we're looking for many, many more partners in engagement. But I also think there's also, because I work so much with the state at the state level as well, that there's state resources as well through OCFS, through the Department of Education as well, that we're also trying to embed and collaborate with, particularly those who are in the state of New York. There may be some folks from other states on the line, I don't know. But particularly in the state of New York, there's a multiplicity of resources that we can also tap into. But I wanted to say this again, there's nothing more important than that one-on-one engagement inside the community, where people know who you are, not waiting for folks to come to us, but we go to them. We're visiting them and offering all these events and parent support groups, parent advisory committees at the libraries, at our partnering organizations, and where our staff is actually going out into the community and sharing with a parent who they may see in the laundromat or at the supermarket or at the library and say, I noticed with your child, would you be interested in Reach Out and Read or Parent Child Plus program? Just that getting back to being, I want to say it again, being human and finding out how people are doing, in other cultures, like in Africa, they ask, how are the children doing first before they even ask how the parent is doing? Because they know if the children are doing well, then the parents are doing well. We want to make sure that parents have all the tools that they need so that children can thrive now and certainly beyond COVID and be successful for the remainder of their life. And I'll stop there.
Thanks, Andre. And Ruth, if you could comment on any resources that you think would be useful to families.
So definitely for the provider side, grants. We all need to be looking at ways to come together, collaborate in terms of applying for funding. And United for Brownsville, of course, unitedforbrownsville.org. We try to be a resource hub. I pride myself on that. So it's not just about, going to our website. We try to make our website your one-stop shop for all resources. So we partner with many providers within and around the Brownsville area. So I would definitely, if you're looking for any resources, I would definitely check out the UB website. I encourage us all to come together in terms of applying for funding for our communities. And yeah, that's what I'd say.
Thank you. And Sharon, if there are any resources you want to.
Well, I just want to say that Carrie and I have been working on creating resources for Reach Out and Read that integrate more emotional intelligence, targeted questions for parents, so that just simply by asking what is that character feeling? Have you ever felt that way? How could the character feel less angry? Starting to think about these books in terms of the emotions that we feel. So giving parents those resources just to remind them to ask those kinds of questions. And also giving them the resource of expectations for ages and stages, so that they're not expecting infants to be reading like preschoolers. So we created a resource where parents can see what to expect of a 0 to 2 and what they should be doing as a parent of a 0 to 2, and the same for toddlers and for preschoolers, because expectations are very important in that relationship building. If the parent has unreasonable expectations, they're going to feel very disappointed, discouraged. They're not going to feel good about their parenting skills. So it's very important for them to get information about realistic expectations of the ages and stages.
Thank you for that. And I just want to add, I think that everyone should check out the, Reach Out and Read of Greater New York website, the Reach Out and Read
Yes.
national website for huge amounts of information. I'll mention that the CDC actually has a really good website, around, understanding your child's development, building on Sharon's comment. So I would check that out. City Source Readers, the readthecity.org website is like just has so much important information about linkages, to programs. Check out my website, the videointeractionproject.org website, and there is so much out there. So I think, Carrie, am I right that we're wrapping up at this moment, or you'll let me know what we should do? I'll just say one quick thing, which is I just want to note that one thing that has come across here is that early literacy and early relational health is central, and there are so many ways that we can support that, and supporting parent and child reading aloud and play may be the most critical way, one of the most critical ways that we can do that, even while we're at the same time supporting and providing those services for mental health that parents need so desperate, so much in these times.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mendelsohn.
I think we have about
Thank you so much.
we have maybe like 5 minutes for some questions from the audience, if that's all right. If you guys are good to stay for another 5 minutes, and we'll just push our break back about 5 minutes. Trish, can you take over the questions then?
Absolutely. So the first question is, how can we encourage new mothers to read to their newborns and infants? Anyone want to take that one?
Well, we can suggest which books are appropriate. We can explain that they're not really necessarily reading, but looking at pictures, that the child might be putting that book in their mouth. And that's how they learn about the world. I mean, once again, it's specific information that helps them to understand what they're going to be providing in terms of a relationship. But I think there are so many wonderful books now where children could just point and name objects and mostly see faces and make faces and do that kind of thing.
Yeah. Sharon took the words right out of my mouth too. Just allowing a child to hold the book, to open up the book, to use the dialogic reading method that many of you are aware of too, as well as pointing at the pictures. And then, the parent can call out the colors. We actually provide guide sheets with the book for parents to use. And just, again, getting back to play, basic activities. It doesn't take a whole lot to formalize activities for play in interacting with the child. And then once again, when you get the opportunity to work with a parent, to allow the parent to really take the lead in the play activity, and in the reading activity as well. I think it really goes a long way, because parents begin to see, oh, I didn't know my child could do that. I didn't know my child could, point some things out. And it also gives motivation for the parent to continue to read the books. And as Sharon mentioned too, making sure that the books are age appropriate as well.
I'll just add, just letting them know that you don't have to be perfect. However it looks to you. I think that's one of the biggest pressures for your first child is I have to be perfect. Just do it messy, do it tired, just do it.
And I just want to quickly add that I love that comment. Just try it out. Sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes it's not going to work. And I just want to add one other quick thing, which is that we talk a lot about serve and return. If you guys have heard that idea, what serve and return is really hard, actually, and especially with newborns and infants, and giving out that book, or giving out it, or having a toy in front of you, right? Those are the ways that those support parents being able to, in a relaxed kind of way, engage with their children. And I'll end with that. Okay, Carrie, or Trish, sorry.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. And just really quickly, the last question is, some people do not look positively on mental health counseling and would not consider going to a counselor to address their issues. What would you suggest?
personal experience, one at a time. You reach one family at a time, you change your community. I can speak from experience. In the beginning, first couple of years, we, were introducing counseling to the family advisory board, and it wasn't that receptive. But as time went on, it wasn't even that they were listening, I think, to us, but they were watching, I'm happy now, so it's got to be working. Whatever she's doing, she's now happy and whole, right? So I want that. So you change one, and then you can change a generation. If you get a young mom from an immigrant background, maybe her family isn't that supportive. If she gets help, she's going to raise her children different. They're going to raise their children different. They're going to talk to their friends about it. So that just, for our community, word of mouth is so powerful. When we see it, we believe it. And when it looks like us, we're more inclined to listen.
I think I just would add to that, we want to take away family's voice and family choice. And so being flexible with them. But what I will say, just to add to Ruth's point, is that you have to build trust. You can refer to many different programs, but again, it goes back to building a positive relationship. That takes time. And we may want them to go right away, but they may not be ready for it at the right time. So some things, it's building trust over a period of time. And as they get to know us as caregivers, then they may be more willing to have that service provided to them. But I think a lot of it starts with trust.
I agree.
And I'm just going to add really, really, really quickly again that, what is a really great way to build trust in healthcare? It's by building on strengths, right? By building on strengths in parent goals, and Reach Out and Read does that.
What a wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to answer those questions. And this was